Hello.
Hey now.
This is very exciting. Welcome to the Learning to Lose podcast. This is the first time.
We're trying to do a new little series here.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I came to Pat the other day, and I was just talking about how, I obviously don't relate on the same level of just sobriety and that level, that side of learning to lose. Obviously, because I'm not sober myself, but I thought it would be fun to start a new little series where it's Learning to Lose presents two losers learning how little they know from experts.
So I think that what you mean by that is, like, as it relates to being a police officer and the captain, we're losers as it relates to that.
No.
That's my sponsor. Do you know who Cory is? Yes, this is Cory.
Hi, I'm Cory.
Yeah.
He is
Hi, Billy.
He was the police commander of Hollywood.
Commander sounds so medieval.
Hollywood, right? District. Have you ever seen that, The Pride of the 77th? The video I did on the police precinct? That's his. He's the reason I did that. So he's like a big police officer guy.
Police officer guy.
Police officer guy.
But like a really amazing person. Like,
thanks, man.
Are not working. Are you still work there?
I'm concluding in my 35-year career in about 2 weeks, Billy.
Oh, wow.
Just retiring after a couple more weeks. I started in 1986, and I'm closing it out here at the end of February.
yeah, so he's our guest.
To answer your question, we're just always losers. We're not losers compared to him, but we're just losing in the fact that, like, we think we know a lot, but there's so much that we don't know, and we're here to just learn from your experience. And I think Learning to Lose is a message that goes far beyond the sobriety side of things. It's just learning from your failures. And anybody that I know that's successful in any field has failed usually more times than they've won to a certain degree. It's just
What do you mean to a certain degree? There's no certain degree. You have to start at the bottom, and you see this thing up here, and it's like you're not gonna be there for a lot. I mean, like, it took you so long.
Well, for me personally, I was born in a housing project. I had 8 brothers and sisters. My dad was a janitor. I've had brothers who were homeless. I remember being in a black and white probably 25 years ago and turning a corner down near Venice Beach, and my brother was in a sleeping bag in the alley. And I remember the fear and the emotion that overwhelmed me at the time based on my brother's condition in life.
Do I know that brother?
No, I have 8 brothers and sisters, Pat. This is one of my older brothers. I've had another brother who's been in and out of jail. He's sober now, but he's been the consequences he has paid for his alcoholism is cost him his life today.
Literally or figuratively?
No, he's figuratively. He
Right.
struggled his whole life with alcoholism. I have parents who both passed away with significant illness of intoxication of alcohol. My parents were raised deeply Catholic. My dad was a janitor at the local Catholic school. I went to school there for free. So I was not one to have had privilege or to have had a silver spoon. It was a life of failure as a child, and knowing as a child I didn't want to live my adult life that way, certainly, and taking advantage of government services. I stood in cheese lines as a kid to get that block of Velveeta cheese so my mom could make sandwiches for us. Anytime the government had a give out during the holidays, we would try to be a part of that. I took advantage of student loans in school. I took advantage of my dad's ability, because he was the janitor, to get a free Catholic education. So there were some advantages that I took advantage of, or opportunities, I should say, that led, and sports was my big alternative. When my brothers struggled with alcoholism, incarceration, and sports was my alternative. It was baseball that led me to kind of stay even keeled and to keep one foot in front of the other and to keep me in school, which eventually led to an education and led to employment.
So you played baseball?
Yeah, I was a baseball pitcher.
And you got like a scholarship, or?
Well, not
you just
necessarily.
were on the team. Yeah.
I played since I was a kid. I was on a bunch of all-star teams, and I ended up playing into college. But it led to being on a sports team is so important, as you guys know, because there's a sense of responsibility. There's a sense of working with others. There's you have to figure things out. The difficulties of, hey, why you and not me, or what are you about, and then try to play together as you do here at Graceland Ranch as a team,
or in a band.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I think for us, like, we were on the sports teams, but I don't know about. Did you really want to be on the team?
Not really, but like
me and Tim were like, let's start a band, and then we started the band. But the band thing is like almost. It's the same kind of thing where you have to like be accountable and like you have to go to band practice and you don't really have like a coach. I think it's a little bit more difficult in some ways, but we were creatives. So I don't think that like my dad just kind of forced me to do that, which is interesting because I feel like I probably would have never ended up gravitating towards that. So when Billy comes, he's gonna be. You might as well just. Can you?
Do we need a third?
Move that over.
Fourth person.
Just start talking on that.
How's this?
Yeah, just in case we don't need anything. Yeah. I'm just have an open heart and an open mind.
Right.
So there's got to have been some benefit though, Pat, from that time you and your brother played ball. Your dad was a coach. You had a lot of interaction with family. You had other kids in the team who were either good kids or goofballs or kids you disassociated with, but there's got to be something that led you to Tim, or did you guys sit there in the outfield and just laugh like this is ridiculous?
I don't think we thought it was ridiculous. I mean, that's where you meet. It's just where you meet a lot of people in the early days, of course, on sports teams.
I never wanted to play base.
Baseball started getting scary. To be quite honest, baseball when it hit like middle school, that was like a weird pocket where the pitchers got super fast but didn't have any control. So there was a weird zone where like probably by the time you get to high school, at least I have some control. And I started like literally getting kind of just scared of the ball. You just get hit all the time.
Yeah,
and it was like not enjoyable. And like I used to like kind of crush it. And then my later years of baseball, I was just like praying to walk usually.
I'm actually realizing right now why I didn't like sports. I'm having kind of an epiphany right now. I need more control. I don't want to be one of 9. I want to be like one of 4.
So why not like tennis for you or something?
I probably would have. Or golf. That probably would have been more my speed, because for me waiting around on a field and then getting a chance to hit 4 times a game, maybe. How many times does a guy actually even get a chance to hit?
Probably 3 times. 3
times in hours. Like that's not enough play. That's not enough action for me. I need more action.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was the problem.
That's definitely specific to baseball.
With baseball was there was just too much waiting and not enough action, and I didn't have enough. I need more. I don't know.
Stimulation.
Well, Cory, what did you want at that point? You were playing sports and everything. What did you think you wanted to do? Be a pro athlete, or were you? Was your head starting to get into career?
So a significant moment in my life was when I was playing high school baseball. I went to Venice High School. Was when Ronald Reagan was shot. I significantly recall the assassination attempt, and I was fascinated by the Secret Service, and I thought the ability to wear a suit, to have a pistol, and to travel the country in some type of protective detail was something I would aspire to.
Right.
So as I went to Sacramento State to continue my education, I was mentored by a Secret Service agent, and that was my plan. And then upon graduating from college, he's like, hey, go back to Los Angeles and work for the LAPD for a few years, get some police experience, and then we'll recruit you and bring you on. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, and he called me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm having such a great time down here. I started to do some TV commercials, and I got involved in some other things, and I was having such a great time. And then I had learned from some folks who were in the Secret Service that it wasn't all what it was cracked up to be, that only very few worked on presidential security details, that most people worked on counterfeit and treasury issues, because they're part of the Treasury Department. So I ended up spending 35 years in the LAPD.
Right.
Can you believe that we're talking to someone on this podcast that spent 35 years in the LAPD? This has been a family friend of mine for a long time, but I'm just really excited to have you on the Learning to Lose podcast. And we have Tim here too. I'm actually I can't wait to send this to my dad.
Awesome.
Because this is such a cool little...
I've known both you guys for 25 years.
I know. I remember you from such early days.
Two of the most colorful guys to the audience out there that I've ever met. And even though I was a coach, and you may not think you're good baseball players, you brought more color and joy and character to that baseball team.
Wow.
And those are the memories you walk away with. You don't traditionally walk away with... Those are the experiences, the memories that matter to me as I got older. Not that 9 kids would go in the same direction. We had some very competitive teams because Pat's dad was the coach. But you guys were just so colorful and so different And I love that.
And it's not like you can really remember like winning or losing at this point.
Actually, my dad was undefeated. He won.
Yeah, he won a lot.
That was the crazy part about. That's the one thing I do remember is like, and I followed in his footsteps as far as being a controversial figure. I mean, you can't not end up like what you saw. You just copy what is. I mean, he may have been trying to teach me one thing, but all I saw was someone obsessed with winning and willing to do whatever it takes to win. And he got kicked out, evicted. And I'm trying to take the good and leave the bad, or I don't know if you want to call it bad, but I'm trying to lead with love and humility. And he is super humble, but at the same time, I think that if winning means everything, you're almost worshiping the winning thing. I want to worship the process.
You're also setting yourself up for sadness because you're not, no matter how hard you try, you're not winning all the time.
So when he heard the whole learning to lose thing, him and Martha's first reaction to that, they were like confused. They were like, losing, like, but after starting to understand what it really means, it's actually kind of like a design for like thinking a little bit differently so that when the losses come, you can just immediately recover from them and learn from them.
It's a process redesigned to get back on your feet and to move forward.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean,
go ahead.
What are these early days in LAPD looking like for you as a low guy on the totem pole? What's that looking like?
It was a struggle. It was a struggle for me personally. It was a time of aggressive law enforcement, of homicides and violence at apocalyptic rates back in the late 80s, early 90s. Just over 1,000 homicides.
There's crazy war on drugs.
Crazy war on drugs. Very aggressive policing. My style is more relationship based. And so I very competitive inside the walls of the LAPD. The only way you'd promote or grow in the organization was if you had the number of statistics necessary, the number of arrests, the number of citations.
Is that how somebody grows in law enforcement? Is like their actual number of how many citations they've written up and arrests they've made and things like that?
That's an era that's gone. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, everything was statistics driven because crime was so bad.
Yeah.
And the only way to measure your productivity or your effectiveness was on what you were doing when you went to work. Remember, taxpayers are paying you a decent salary to do something, not just drive around. And the goal was to drive crime down and drive traffic accidents down. How do you drive those things down? You put people in jail. You make enforcement stops to try to recover weapons, to try to prevent future crimes. So the more widgets you check or boxes you check, the more statistics that went up, the better chance you had to promote in the organization.
Right.
Very competitive. Remember, a lot of cops are ex-athletes. We have a locker room. We all share the same locker room. Men and women have different locker rooms, of course. And it was very, very competitive. And there was a lot of ego involved. It was very different than what has become today.
Yeah.
We had at the time, 70 to 100 officer-involved shootings a year. Today we have 25 officer-involved shootings. We've switched this thing completely. Our homicide numbers have collapsed over the last 30 years.
Wow.
We had, although we had a lot of homicides in 2020 because of the pandemic and other issues. Prior to that, we were shooting at 300 homicides a year or below, 244 to 250 in the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So we had 11 to 1,200 when I started, and my last several years we're at 250 to 300. Crime has fallen off a cliff. But that's not the perspective if you look at your device or see what's going on throughout the country.
So why has it gotten so much better, you think?
I think because society has gotten better. I think society has learned, government has helped, but I think as a people, we've leaned on the appropriate resources to help. And one could be education, one could be health, one could be recreation. One could be improved parenting. You look at what are the causal effects of crime and what you can do to stop it. And one incredible tool is technology.
Yeah, I was going to say that you're less likely to get away with stuff these days. That's got to be a
every
factor.
heartbeat is measured by a device. Everywhere you go, there's a footprint. Any savvy detective can catch a crook. No one commits a crime once and then runs off and never commits a crime again.
Right.
You start committing 1, 2, and 3, and 4 crimes out of need and desperation. You're just leaving a trail of evidence. The challenge has always been the prosecution and the criminal justice system to come back and realize, okay, what's the consequence that's appropriate here? Putting someone in jail is going to cost taxpayers a fortune versus putting someone in a health recovery program like here at Graceland Ranch that will get somebody healthy so they do not commit these crimes moving forward, which is the ultimate goal.
Right. Do you think that all, you were saying it was kind of brutal police work and maybe even some ways that you guys were doing stuff that possibly even regret? I don't know.
Of course. But you can look at the scandals we've gone through.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim, let's be honest. LAPD has gone through 30 years of reform, 30 years of evolvement based on scandal.
Right.
And I've been through and a part of all that to some degree. And there's internal conflict and it has shown itself. But I will say the organization has gotten better with every year and with every evolution as the world has changed. I think if you look at the blueprint of policing in this country, I think LAPD has been one of the shining stars in reform and re-examining. We've paid a dear price for some of the mistakes that a few of police officers have made. Right.
And then I got to think that you went through sort of one era that is kind of interesting, I think, to us, is like the sort of NWA era, when it was kind of like, it was like the fuck the police era. Like all of a sudden now it was like almost a movement. Was that, were you kind of, did you go through that?
So, the NWA era back in the 80s, the 90s? Absolutely.
It was like when rap music kind of turned to get, kind of used as a cultural movement, became a pop culture thing.
Correct. And it was all based in Long Beach, South Central Los Angeles. And those were the roots of the pop culture movement related to rap. And those artists, and as you know, that was all surrounded oftentimes by violence. And sexism at times, and the way they, displayed women and things of that nature. I was part of all that in the early years.
Do you think? I mean, do any specific early sort of failures on your end come to mind that you ended up learning from, or changed your perspective, or
Yeah, one thing is that every day you have a choice to look up and look forward, or to live in regret. And my life has been in a series of failures, a series of missteps. I have been on the mat more in my life, from relationships to issues at work with relationships, to trying to promote in the organization. It's been very, very difficult. A good example was, I was telling you, I did commercials. I was in this movie Space Jam with Michael Jordan. And we shot the movie at Blair Field, Cal State Long Beach, down that way back in the 90s, early 90s. And there's a baseball scene. And they brought me in. I had done some baseball commercials at the time for Miller Lite, Nike, a couple other companies. And they brought me in to pitch to Michael Jordan. And they had thousands of fans who were stand-ins, or whatever you call them, extras. And so it was an Ivan Reitman production. It was a huge production. And so they had all these cameras around me on the pitcher's mound. Remember, I'm a police officer at the time, and I'm moonlighting as this actor guy.
Yeah.
And I'm pitching to Michael Jordan, and I hadn't pitched in years. So I thought it'd be like a half an hour shot. I was going to pitch to Michael Jordan, and the catcher is talking to Michael Jordan as he's hitting. And now all of a sudden I'm pitching 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and now I'm not throwing strikes anymore.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm like wild. Now I'm hitting Michael Jordan to the point that these crowd is booing me. So now here I am, a kid in my early 30s, late 20s. I'm like, oh my goodness, man, I am standing amongst failure at the biggest limelight right now. And now Ivan Reitman is screaming because we're losing light. And I couldn't, they finally brought a stand-in in for Michael Jordan. It took 4 days to get the shot, which is about a 60 to 90 second shot in the movie. But
damn.
I mean, I was really standing in failure.
Right.
And I also remember to recognize the difficulty of this process. And, what's the alternative? I have to work my way through. I have to fight my way out of the situation. They helped, obviously, by bringing in a stand-in, and then they moved some cameras around and made it happen. But my life has been an illustration of that. But my resolve has been to get back on my feet, to try again. And, I have a hashtag I use in a lot of my nonsense called Die Trying, is that I continue to try even though I've been down. I've stumbled in my career regarding promotional exams. I've pissed the wrong people off that have thwarted my growth at times. I've been involved in internal affairs misconduct complaints against me for many, many years, where I was in the so-called LAPD penalty box,
right.
which is basically you're accused of misconduct. You have a significant complaint over your head. Until we determine the truth or the outcome of this, you're unpromotable. And some of these complaints went on for years. So
Are you able to tell us at what one of those was?
Yeah, sure. I remember I was dating a cheerleader, an NFL cheerleader, and we broke up. And I remember we broke up, and then she took my American Express card to Hawaii with her girlfriend and spent $5,000 on it. Man, I was a kid at the time. I was in my 20s. I'm broke. And I just had my first brand new American Express card. It was the green color. And I'm a young officer. And she went there and spent the money. And then I took her to small claims court. And I won. I remember the judge yelling at me in the small claims court, "How dare you bring this girl in here?" And he chewed me out in front of her. But in the end, he's like, "I have to side with this guy. He has all the evidence. He has the bills. He has the card. All this money was spent in Hawaii." So immediately she filed a internal affairs misconduct complaint alleging that I had stole something. And I was working Hollywood Vice at the time, undercover. I was working undercover and working the Hollywood Vice unit. And I remember the difficulty of it because I got caught up in a difficult situation with the investigator who seemed to have a personal vendetta or had an angst against me. We just had conflict. And that's what happens. You have conflict, and all of a sudden he slows the complaint down. I was due to promote. I didn't promote for a long time, like 14 months. And it turns your gut. It turns you sour. And here I thought I was doing the right thing by adjudicating this matter in court. She was supposed to pay me the lump sum back, never got the money back. She started making payments, and then she defaulted on that. But typical, and what the public doesn't understand, she used the internal affairs system to strike back at me because whether the complaint's frivolous or true, we take all complaints. So they had a team of investigators spend upwards of a year investigating this. And a year later, they come back and say, "No, what
a waste of money."
So that's the problem. The taxpayers spend a fortune in this, but remember, we hold ourselves true. We want to be of the upwards of integrity. We want to show the public that we're trustworthy. So in the end, a year, 14 months, it comes back totally clean, and the department tags me in the investigation for my lack of cooperation and my inability to be forthwith with the organization. But they had kind of pried it in my personal life. She had given them a bunch of personal letters I wrote, and I remember how shameful I felt. During one of the interviews, the investigator, the LAPD investigator, was reading these letters out loud on tape in the investigation room. A personal letter between me and a girl.
This is crazy.
And I just remember how shameful I felt and how difficult it was. But I bounced back. I didn't quit. I didn't give up, and I rose to find another day.
Just kept your head high and charging on.
It's
knowing
very
that.
difficult. It's very difficult. And there were multiple cases that I remember. I managed an estate once, and someone alleged that I mismanaged the estate to my benefit. Well, that cost another year of an investigation.
Right.
And often we turn on each other in the organization. But like you guys, die trying. Learning to lose. I've learned to lose, and I learned to get back on my feet.
What did she say you stole?
A computer.
Just lies.
My brother had given her a computer, and she alleged that he stole it and that I knew about it or something of that nature. It was like 30 years ago. But she used the power of the department to stall me in my career.
When you're grabbing at straws, she had no power, so she's using everything she's got.
But so I want to admit my loss in that. I should have never taken a small claims court. I should have just said, you know what? I intentionally let her use my American Express card to go to Hawaii. I didn't think she spent $3,000 or $5,000. That's on me.
Yeah.
And I was a kid at the time, a little immature myself, and I was so devastated that she did that I wanted to not get even or to reacquire the debt. I mean, $5,000 in 1991 or 94 is a lot of money. So I need to take responsibility and say, you know what? Looking back, if I just walked away, none of that would have happened. I would have continued to rise in my career. I mean, I ended up doing so. Obviously, I finished as a commander, a high-ranking official, but those were the early years of failure in my struggle.
Yes, sometimes it's like you got to bite the pride, right? When we've come across this before, where it's like, somebody owes you money or something, and sometimes you have to look at it like, you know what? Even though chasing them down, I can just get, they owe me $500 or whatever. It's worth $500 to just have them out of my life and things move on. It's honestly
but 5,000 is a lot.
Yeah. If I only knew then what I know now, I should have walked away and kept my head up. I had some people around me influencing me that, hey, she just screwed you, man. You need to get right. And then the judge validated my issues, and then she went right to the department to make this false allegation and cause the pain.
Don't you think? I like to try to look at it as that like had to happen. Like, I feel like I don't want to ever regret anything, and everything that happened in my life led me to where I am now. So if you could, whenever someone asks me, oh, if you could go back and change anything, I wouldn't. It's like faith. Like, another thing you say all the time is keep the faith.
I do. Yeah. Pat, I agree 100%. I wouldn't change a thing in how I've arrived here in 2021 to this day. I've only been a better human being, and I've learned from those mistakes. You know, when you're down on the mat, someone once told me, when someone looks you in the eyes and says, you're fired, I don't have any need for you, get your stuff and go, you've got to suck it up, man. That's a gut check for you. So to have those experiences in life, to have those failures in life, it's a test of your character. It's a test of your will. It's a test of your desire to become a better human being as a result of that loss. And you have to live in that loss. You have to live in that failure. You have to live in that pain to get back to the road to lead you to the promised land. It's a difficult road. You guys have been on it your whole life. I'm on that same road. The promised land may be Saturday night for a couple hours. There's no year-long promised land. It's a difficult path. But we all stay on that path. Well, most of us get back up and try. You got to keep trying. You got to keep going for it.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like, commander has got to be, it's like one of the top titles. It seems like you kind of ended, since you're retiring, we'll call it ended your career, on about as close to as high as you can get, or among the highest rankings. So
correct.
So that's, we'll call that a win, right?
Huge win.
How did what was the trick there? Obviously, there's plenty of people that have been in the department as long as you, I'm sure, longer, and you kind of got to that top level. What do you think the secret sauce is there?
So the secret sauce is die trying. You got to stay the course. You got to go through the difficult periods of your life and put one foot in front of the other. You have to have a plan of action, and you have to go for it. And it was some things happened in my career regarding some complaints that went away. It allowed me to go into a position where I became an investigator, actually, Tim. I ended up working for Internal Affairs.
Yeah.
I ended up proving myself as an investigator. I ended up becoming a major case investigator and investigated some of the biggest cases at that time. And it put me in front of bosses in the organization who knew of my history and knew of my struggles. But because I was able to perform in front of them, I was able to be excellent. I had energy and enthusiasm and a desire to move forward. It just created opportunities. And those activities led to the outcomes, in which I ended up making police sergeant. I performed well in various divisions, and as a result, it put me in a position to make police lieutenant. I worked Occupy LA, and I was able to work for a deputy chief and manage some significant incidents. And then that led to me making captain at Hollywood, which is an exposure, high-profile media division.
That definitely looked like maybe one of the most fun places to be, because you were just, you're part of red carpet events, big sort of like these big PR moments, and it seemed like you were seemed like from the outside that a big part of your job was like just being the face, being friendly, showing up.
Yeah, so that's it. Yeah. And so a lot goes on inside the walls of a police station. A lot of things, a lot of good things, a lot of challenges. But if the station is running itself sound, the responsibility of the police captain in a command is to be the face of the LAPD in that community. Hollywood being Hollywood, the Walk of Fame, the premieres, the cameras, and all the media is focused in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. So I became that face, and it's something that I became comfortable with. That seemed to be my niche, my ability to reach across the aisle or to extend an olive branch. But I do want to recognize that I spent years in South Los Angeles, which is what both of you guys are well aware of, in one of the most violent communities in all of the United States of America. I had 103 homicides in my 2 years there.
Yeah, we did one day of a ride along, and we saw guns drawn.
Correct. Yeah, it was a extremely dangerous, violent community with by the way, some very good people. It's a gang-driven, narcotics-driven community.
South Central,
but fantastic people live there who are trying every day to do good things. But the challenge is because there's so much crime there, that you put so much police there. I had a station of 375, 400 cops, one of the largest stations in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I mean, the people in the Pacific Palisades don't see a black and white up near the ocean. In South LA, there's a black and white every couple of blocks turning the corners.
Wow.
It creates a sense of occupation and suppression. It's
Right.
not our intent necessarily, but you have bodies down. You have gang violence, narcotics violence, you have robberies. Some of the most violent crime occurs in those sections of town. And as taxpayers, that's where you deploy. Taxpayers would expect that is where you would deploy your police officers. But that has a negative connotation because now you're stopping good people. You're making mistakes because you're involved in so many activities.
What was your relationship to the gangs?
So I thought my personal relationship was okay. I mean, the gang leaders, we had, the mayor has a thing called the, oh, go ahead, Pat, I'm sorry. The mayor has a program called the Gang Reduction Youth Development GRID program, which is a great program, actually. They spend millions of dollars bringing folks in who are from gangs and who are older in life, who've gotten out of prison, who work with the gangs and work with the police to forge a better relationship. The reality is that black on black gang
I'm trying to
crime,
think like you got to like try and communicate, like have the communicative relationship with them to get some inside. I don't know.
Yeah, it's challenging. So yes, in a sense, there's so many turf wars and drug battles and turf wars going on there. That was the goal. You know, it was the goal to get to the leaders in the community, to try to get to the gang leaders, or try to talk to gang members themselves. You know, they had issues with the police when they weren't respected. But by and large, they knew that the police were there to keep their families safe if their families weren't in gangs. So it was extremely challenging. I'll just say that.
Right. And you're trying to protect the families, but like gang wars themselves, do you almost like sit back and let those just kind of take their course? Or is it, do you?
Never. You try to be preventative.
Right.
I mean, the goal is to be preventative, to have officers in place, to have visible people in place, to have the clergy, to have other leaders in the community, educators in the community, to have the gang officials in. We have a summer night lights program. You try to do all these things to prevent, but as you know, one murder in one neighborhood 3 blocks away will cause that retaliation to happen fast.
Right.
And sometimes it's so hard to put a bandage on it because it's so rapid. And so you try to get a hold of those leaders to get into the community if they're not listening to the police to stop the violence. So you try to get ahead of it. Unfortunately, in 2020, we didn't. I mean, it was extremely violent in 2020 in South Los Angeles.
Can I just kind of mention something about that? There's this clip of you taking a knee in front of the protesters. And I think like at that time you have like, it was sort of like protesters versus police or right versus left. And when you went in there and you were like, you basically joined them like where they were at. And that was sort of a show of humility, like maybe white flag. Like that's kind of the whole thing. That's the whole thing that we're doing here. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
So there was a time, so we had a lot of violence in Los Angeles. We had significant unrest and chaos and crime.
During the BLM movement.
Yes, in late May, early
just
June.
Just about a year ago, even less maybe.
Correct. It's all over the news. It was a very difficult Saturday in Los Angeles. A couple of days later, a large crowd had gathered again. There were multiple protests. But
I mean, you were out there, Tim. Tim got a photo of like a fire. Like he got this crazy photo of like, it was kind of like they were rioting.
It was that first day when everybody kind of, I'm like, I think this is going to turn into rioting. I'm like, I kind of want to go down there and document it. We were sitting in my friend's jacuzzi. I'm like, history's happening right now. Let's just go down there. And then we got to Fairfax and it was when it's, you know, windows were shattering. All the bricks were flying through windows, fires in the street. And then the police flanked us in. They tried to trap everybody in and started firing rubber bullets. And so I was running. There's a video of me running and shots were being fired in our direction, you know, rubber bullets. But
so I was there and leading that effort. That was one of the most darkest days in my career. It's very difficult.
Wow.
There were thousands and thousands of good people there.
Yeah.
There were some people there that were hell-bent on destruction and damage. And the good people, when they were told time and time again to please leave so we could stop this vandalism and looting, they didn't leave. So therefore, the rubber bullets were deployed. and there's still investigations going. It was a very difficult day. A couple of days later, a large group had gathered, probably 5,000 to 10,000 again, up on Sunset Boulevard. And I had hundreds of officers deployed. I had Metropolitan Division assets. I had jail buses. I probably had 300 officers, mobile field forces, tactical support element teams. I thought we were going to have another chaotic night with violence. And as a last resort, I thought, you know what? I talked to one of the captains there. I'm like, let me go in and talk to this group. And he's like, you're crazy, man. You can't go talk to these folks. They're going to kill you. I'm like, no, I don't think so, man. I said, let me give this a shot. I know my heart.
Lead with love.
Yeah. I know my heart, and I know my reasonableness, but I'm like, at the same time, if it doesn't go well, get me the hell out of this group. Pull me out quick. And lo and behold, I went in there and I tried to as Pat said, to be a leader of solidarity, to speak of unity, to acknowledge the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota. And as a result, they asked, as a symbol of peace for that evening, would I take a knee out of respect for their cause? And I said, if you will not engage in any violence and damage the properties that are here, if you will not hurt any police officers that may have to come out here to deal with this issue, they said, absolutely no issue at all. You take a knee, we're good. We'll leave within an hour. I mean, there's 5,000 to 10,000 people there. And, by the grace of God, as I started to speak, there were a couple of hecklers, but quickly they were shouted down by some of the informal leaders in the group. And I acknowledged by taking a knee their pain and to try to do so in a level of solidarity and unity in a peacekeeping effort, knowing my officers would not be harmed or have to even come out from around the corner. Like I said, there was hundreds ready to go. And it just worked. It was a magical moment in the city's history. There was no violence. And then officers did not have to deploy on a skirmish line. They didn't have to have helmets on, or I put batons on in their waists. And the crowd was very grateful. I ended up getting acknowledgement from all worldwide attention. And
the media covered it, which was a big deal.
Largely covered media event. And that's my responsibility. Remember, I represent the city of Los Angeles as a peacekeeper. Many of the police officers had issues with it. They saw me as doing something they did not wish that I had done. But I know where my heart is. I know that I'm a peacekeeper first. And it was appropriate.
So their issues were that you were kind of joining the other side.
Correct. And those are some of the cultural issues. Now, hey, many police officers were glad I did it. Didn't have to go out there and stand on a skirmish line or have to deal with work through the crowd for 3 or 4 hours. But many were very pleased quietly. But there was many who have since made complaints against me again through internal affairs.
But we have to start seeing humans as humans. Like, we're all one species and we have different ideas of how to get, I think, what is really the same thing. We all want the same thing, and then we attach our egos to our position. And then I think what you did was, it's like we have to try to meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And you kind of did that because you were able to put your ego aside. And
yeah. For that evening, for that time, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We achieved peace. The group is extremely grateful. I think the group saw my heart. As I said, listen to my heart. Don't look at my badge. Let me speak on behalf of the city that we are all in this together.
That's right.
And it was a good moment.
And it's hard to speak to like a mob or a group, because it's like most people as an individual, you can have some sort of breakthrough, but like when people get into a mob, it's like a whole new sort of mentality and morals come into play.
So Saturday, you're right. So there's an academic term. The mob mentality is just not some street term. It comes from academics. There's an elixir of ingredients that get into a good person's mind that they will end up doing things they normally would not do based on what's happening environmentally around them. And that's what happened Saturday. You had really good people who got engaged in activities that they normally, I don't think, would not do.
I mean, it's even crazy. Like the thought passed my mind, and half of my friends own stores on Fairfax and stuff. Yeah. And like you see people running out with like a cause statue, which is super valuable, and like shoes, and even it crosses my mind like, damn, it'd kind of be dope to get one of those things. But like, obviously, I'm not going there. But like the fact that it could even cross my mind, and I consider myself pretty morally.
But I think it goes both ways. Like you saw the mob turn to love. Yeah, I think it is possible to it's just all it is an amplified whatever the feeling is gets amplified. So if we can amplify the love, which is what you did that day, you start to see everyone sort of changes and influences each other to do like what we're doing here. We're basically taking a bunch of lying, cheating drug addicts and changing the whole thing. And now they're like using all those same traits to help each other.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I don't necessarily think that a mob mentality needs to be like a negative thing. If the mob is there for a good purpose, it could go like the other way.
So remember when you were there, Tim, Saturday, the world had reached a breaking point. The United States had reached a breaking point. There had been violent protests throughout the country based on what happened in Minnesota. And I think that was the breaking point Friday and mostly Saturday in Los Angeles. And come Monday, I think there was a sense that, hey, we need to fix this quickly. We cannot keep coming back to this violent message every day. And it was just not me trying to engage with the crowd as in a peacekeeping effort. It was the crowd understanding as well, we don't want to go back to violence again. Yeah. And another point is that as much as you feel like, hey, it would be great to get a dope pair of shoes, my perception is like, man, someone owns that store. And there's not a lot of profit in shoes or in a lot of things we do, and they're busting their ass. And to repaint a store, to fix a broken glass window, and to recover from the loss of property. Now, granted, it's only property, it's not people. My heart breaks for them because they're the ones who are legitimately paying taxes, that are working 7 days a week to try to sustain a living for their family through a reasonable economy.
The justification is that the insurance will just handle it.
Yeah, I know. I think that people think that for
the
sure.
system is just going to take care of it and fuck the system.
But I was hearing insurance wasn't covered. Like there was
I'm just saying that's how people make it.
It's just a pair of sneakers. I get that. It's just a pair of shoes, but there's a lot more behind that pair of sneakers. That's someone's livelihood, and to refill that store with inventory, to get insurance claims, and glass costs what, $2,000 or $3,000 a sheet in these stores. So to see restaurants shut down, Melrose Mac allegedly had $4 to $7 million in equipment taken, and that's people's equipment that was in for repair.
The Apple store.
Shit.
Yeah, the Apple store.
Oh, that's brutal.
So I mean, and the crazy
gone.
thing is that there's so much evidence because people seem to want to film each other committing these crimes.
I know
and so there's been hundreds of arrests of
that's
people.
the funniest thing about the Capitol, the Capitol takeover.
It's like,
do you think that people are inherently good?
Yes. I think
or bad.
From my heart, hey, I'm an optimist. I do believe that people generally want to be good.
I do too.
Generally, yes.
I think we have to see it that way.
Yeah. I think generally, but there's a lot of disadvantage, a lot of people who don't.
Yeah,
have
I feel like this is kind of the. It's like however you see it is what it will be.
Correct.
Like so,
a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and if we all try to see it. My sponsor in Michaelis, he lives in Bali, and he's like, you can believe there's two different like things you can choose to believe. They're both kind of like lies because we don't really know for sure. But why believe, like Tim said the other day, he's like, I'm an eternal optimist. I don't think the world is out to fuck me. It never really has been, but there are so many people that think that way. And as long as they're thinking that way, I don't know, things just kind of end up becoming that way. So if you're choosing to believe one of two things, why not believe, like I go through this struggle every day where I'm like, are we going to fill the beds? And then I have a choice to either think, yes, Danielle's amazing. She's going to fill all these fucking beds and there's going to be a waiting list. And that is what's going to happen. And on a bad day, I'm thinking all the opposite of that. Why believe the bad lie when you can believe the good lie?
Well, if you think with negativity, a negative stream will develop and overtake you mentally where you will live in cynicism and negativity and never work your way out of it. To choose optimism, to choose faith, to choose hope, and to choose love is the appropriate path, but having the balance to realize that, hey, things are difficult and we have to work our way out of things. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And those who... those who choose the momentum of life, the optimism of life, and can work through struggle and can work through pain, will get back up and see a better day for themselves. Those who live in the swallows of cynicism and negativity and who are struggling legitimately, those are the ones we need to rally around. One thing I love about Graceland Ranch is you are your brothers and sisters keeper. I think you treat everybody here like you expect to be treated. So you have some principal, fundamental faith facts that allow optimism here and of hope that you don't denigrate or disrespect anybody on this property. And that's the expectations you set, because you have a self-management skill set that values those beliefs, and you try to live to that based on your experiences in life and your struggles in life. And the reality is, like you said earlier, Pat, you're only a better human being based on your struggles, your path. And to have had those failures and overcome those failures, although we wish they may not have occurred, has made you a better Patrick Ridge today and a better Tim Carhart.
The only way I can live that way, Tim might be able to. Okay, he's not an alcoholic, whatever. For whatever reason, he is the way he is. But the only way I'm able to think that way is through the faith thing.
Yeah.
And also the learning to lose thing and the process, like understanding that this is just a process. And if I can find joy in the process, then it's not even about how many beds are full. It's about the people that are actually here and staying detached from like the results or the future that I'm choosing to believe, the lie that, like, anytime I'm projecting into the future, I'm just playing out scenarios that are not real. So really that's
correct.
Another version of believing the lie, which is actually what alcoholism is. It's this mental obsession of believing that I can drink and use like a normal person, even though I've been shown time and time again I can't. I'll also choose to believe the lie, whatever lie my mind is telling me about the future. But the truth is like this is the only thing that's real, is this moment right now. And the faith thing is the hard part. For Tim, it's very difficult. Tim doesn't have a God that he believes in. I don't know that he needs one. But for the people who do, like me, I choose to believe that lie or that positive thing just because it helps me in my life.
I think I have a faith. There's a version of a God. It's so hard. It's harder for me to pinpoint what that is.
I can't either, bro.
The feeling, there's the feeling of the connectivity of the energy that is connecting us. That's real. It's like, even logically speaking, it's real.
That's one of the main ways that I define God is God exists in our connections to other human beings. And right now God is present. I can't really explain it either. Yeah. That's why we read Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount, because Emmett Fox broke down Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes in kind of a literal way so that we can understand what blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Mm-hmm. What does that actually mean? Because if I read that from the Bible, I'm like, well, is meek a good thing? And what does he mean by inherit the earth? You know, and what that actually means is meekness only, all meekness is that we understand that the will of God for us is beyond anything we could have ever come up with. So when we're experiencing these losses, we just can't see why it's happening, but having faith that we know it's the best thing for us based on God's design or whatever. That's meekness. It's like getting out of the way and having enough humility to just like let it happen. I don't need to be trying to control everything because I know God has a bigger plan. And inheriting the earth means that we're going to have a life, an inner life beyond our wildest dreams. Like, I think earth represents like our body and our life, you know? So it doesn't really mean we're going to go to heaven, although some people may choose to believe that. Emmett Fox is explaining all these things in like a, I guess, scientific or literal way, because there's a reason it's the best-selling book of all time.
That's beautiful.
It's not because someone like tricked us and pulled the wool over our eyes. Like, this archetype of Jesus is like the ultimate loss, the ultimate surrender, the ultimate form of forgiveness. While people are throwing rocks at his head, he's literally saying, forgive them, they know not what they do. And if we can take that into our life, I've from my experience, it's always been the best. Like, you did that to a certain degree when you took that knee. It was like, look, I'm going to sort of try to be empathetic and forgiving and bring the love. And that's...
But a lot of that actions come from my faith-filled life.
Right.
That I am a follower of Jesus Christ and that Jesus is my Savior, and that I try to live a life principally based on the Bible, and my actions
Danielle's over there like cheering. Danielle's so like, sorry.
My actions are a result of how I was raised as a child and how I try to practice my life, knowing that I'm a sinner and I make mistakes every day. Yeah. And I think my response and how I live my daily life, including that event, is based on fundamentally how I feel in my heart, based on the heart that was molded in my faith.
So you just said something that I have to just really touch on real quick. So based on the fact that you're a sinner, so we make mistakes and we have flaws. The problem, and that's why this learning to lose thing is so profound, because I think a lot of people, they make mistakes and they fail and they can't recover from it. The shame is so great that it causes them to sort of give up and continue to go down that wrong path. I mean, any, serial killer or thief or person that's just in the wrong, going down the wrong path, I think it's because they have so much shame and they can't forgive themselves. So they just sort of give up. I think so. Being able to make those mistakes and be like, okay, I'm not the mistake I made. Does that make sense?
To a degree it does. But remember, there are some very evil, malicious, criminal minded folks intent on hurting others.
But I think that they
ahead.
got to that point because they weren't able to accept and embrace a mistake or a flaw as just that, and that there's still goodness and there's still hope for recovery in them. And I think sometimes that has to do with the parenting and bad parenting and shame-based parenting. And I don't know, like, I think if we can just learn from our mistakes and grow from them rather than continuing to go down that bad path of like shame and failure and that negative thought life. So basically what you're saying is some people are born evil.
Well, I don't know if they're born evil, but in most of the people that are, when we do the studies, you see the deprivation they have as children by lack of having two parents, by lack of having a functional household, by lack of love. So there's a lot of ingredients.
Nurture is obviously probably the heaviest
maybe
part.
they're beyond the point of no return.
Sometimes, but how often do you see people go to prison and come out evangelical, where they find they have the time to find their faith, to find hope and promise, and then they come out and they start trying to teach others to prevent those individuals from making the mistakes they made. So it's a complex issue, but there's a lot of reasonable reasons for why this is happening.
One thing I wanted to ask, it's kind of different than the
If
emotional
you just
side.
don't touch the mic anymore, because every time you touch the mic, it's like,
Dude, I'm new to this.
yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just letting you know.
I wanted to ask something just because you're on the inside there. Just with the whole the day of the rioting and everything, there was all the conspiracies about, I guess, Antifa and like bricks being like put out for people and things like that. I'm just wondering your personal opinion on the
Great question.
so like all that sort of like conspiracy theory stuff.
So what I think I've learned by saying that, I always say 99% of all people at a protest are good American people who want to express their fundamental right to protest government, a form of government, including the police. Oftentimes you have groups that will then hijack a good crowd for their own causes.
Right.
And maybe we saw two groups, Antifa and BLM, engaged in different responses in a group setting that had people who were with their families and their kids, trying to expose them to American education.
It's maybe.
So to some degree, I think factually, you look at some of the studies that people they've pulled out of these protests and have identified what groups they associate with. That doesn't mean all BLM folks are criminals by any means. I mean, they have an agenda. They protested. There was a violent group, Antifa. If you saw the Antifa group, they're knowingly violent. The ones that were detained or arrested.
What does that stand for again?
I don't even have any idea. So,
What does Antifa stand for?
Anti-fascism.
Anti-fascism.
So you do have
Wickham.
So thanks, Wickham. So often you do have in violent protest, you have a good group that starts out doing the intentful correct thing, and then you have a group that is so hell bent on destruction that they'll hijack a good protest. And I think that happened throughout the week. And obviously there's people around this country who found such anger and pain in what's happening regarding police community relations, and they took to violence.
Yeah. But like literally people were saying, there was a lot of the big thing that was going around were like the strategic placement of pallets of bricks and things like that. So do you think,
I have
These
no
things, like-
knowledge of that.
Yeah.
I was part of the intelligence process.
Yeah.
I was getting information every few minutes through our intelligence team. There was so much information going out, some misinformation, but traditionally, no. Without discussing our own tactics, I was never made aware. If I was made aware, I have no knowledge of factually having pallets dropped off that were used to hurt the police or to destroy businesses
Right.
that I can recall, at least.
Yeah, I think most of the conspiracy theories are people just getting carried away and trying to look.
Well,
lot
I
of
mean,
social
look,
media
but
is
here's
quite an animal.
this. I think there is one thing that I think is probably true, which is that the BLM movement was hijacked. I mean,
Antifa?
no, I think that the BLM movement started as something that was like cool and organic, and then like I think it was taken over by like Hillary Clinton.
It kind of always comes down. It comes
Hillary Clinton?
for lack of a better.
Hey.
Well, it just comes down to like the
Well, because they're funding, they're
me-
paying so much money, from what I've heard,
Oh, thanks.
to through social media and to have it become something that's not what it was intended to be.
well, yeah,
initially.
the media conglomerates. They just make so much money off of hot ticket items like that.
Yeah.
That's what they, kind of what they say.
And then there's also this thing that's being talked about. They were distracting the public from the trial that she was on, and I have some people that I follow that I actually like trust, and like they broke it down in a way that made like a lot of sense, like the media outlets.
So, hey, in the end, any movement, any group, there has to be a discussion. And I think
Yeah.
one of the challenges sometimes with these groups is they don't want to sit down and hammer out a piece of court, in a sense. And when a group doesn't want to talk and refuses to talk until government is overthrown or till their agenda is adopted, sometimes that becomes unreasonable, and there's challenges. And I think that's some of the things that have happened in this country. Only when we get back to breaking bread, when we get back to figuring this thing out through discussion, through a recognition and understanding. There's a lot of controversial issues in this country right now, and we need to figure them all out. We have a new administration, and hopefully that'll bring new opportunities, and hopefully we'll find a way that we can coexist together. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to destroy an economy and destroy all of us as individuals, and no one will be able to prosper.
What's the vibe in the police force right now? We kind of were talking about this last time I saw you. How you're like, morale is pretty
Terrible.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
Like a lot of officers almost feel like
Abandoned, betrayed.
writing it.
Yeah,
phoning it in.
you have politicians that have turned their backs on the police, who have normally been in route step with the police. If you're an elected politician, you need the police to protect your community so you can win re-election and you can show signs of success. And our relationship with the political elected leaders of Los Angeles has traditionally been very good. However, there was such momentum regarding the defund movement that many of them stepped aside, returned any donatable funds that they were given for their elections, and the police feel betrayed by them. That includes the mayor of Los Angeles. People, many of the officers feel the community has turned their back on them because the power right now is not with the majority. There seems to be other groups that have the platform right now, which are casting stones at the police. And it just breaks the heart of human beings who wear uniforms, who try to come to work to serve the public every day.
Right.
These are issues much greater than a 22-year-old kid, a female police officer, trying to go out and help somebody during the day. The responsibilities and the burdens these young officers carry are insurmountable based on the perceptions that are being cast upon them by media today. It just breaks my heart, and it breaks their heart. There's been an issue with the defund movement of taking monies away from the police department. And I think we're all trying to reestablish the role of police in America.
Yeah.
And they're trying to reestablish their individual identity. A lot of them have had family members who've been in the protests. They've had people in their own families turn against them. I've had people who were close friends of mine turn against me, or maybe just turn away from me, not
Right.
turn against me. And we're all trying to go through and deal with that. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of Pat would speak on this too, because we've been talking about it a lot lately. It's just like cancel culture has gotten so carried away. It seems like you know, I don't want to be sympathetic to, you know, people that have been wronged, especially in sexual harassment areas and all that. But it always seems like it starts in one thing, and now you like almost we start overcompensating, and then you lean in. It's now become the sort of like guilty until proven innocent. And I don't know where the balance is there. I'm not going to claim that I do, but it's the same thing with cops. You know, the police force. It's like now it's overcorrecting. Everybody's on the chopping block, and that's got to be kind of a hard thing.
It's difficult because every community needs services, and that includes public safety. If there was an alternative that we didn't need policing in a community and we could save money, I think government leaders would be like, hey, this place is so safe. We don't need the cops. Let's give the money to schools. Let's give the money to Parks and Rec. Let's build better libraries. Let's build better roads. But our communities haven't proved or established a level of safety by policing themselves to move the police and the monies away from that. So, and now what we're doing is we're moving the police away from communities by reducing budgets, by eliminating police, and crime is going up.
Yeah.
And the people within those communities can't control that level of crime. Right. And it's not outsiders going into those communities and committing crime. It's people within the own community committing that crime. So we're going backwards so fast. And if a community could police themselves, I'd be the first to say, no, we don't need the police in here. Let's give the money to the Parks Department. Let's give the money to kids. Let's build some little leagues. But public safety is a significant issue.
Yeah. What do you think? This is almost for like own selfish reasons, but like, if you get pulled over, what do you think the best thing? What's the best way to cooperate and like not get a ticket?
Not get a ticket. So,
like what?
So the first thing to do is to cooperate. The reality is that police officers are trained observance regarding vehicular violations. And no, I don't like getting pulled over. Yeah. And the reality is, if you do get pulled over, the best thing I can tell you is to be respectful, to have a level of respect for the officer. The officer will be wearing a body worn, and the officer 99.9% of the time will be respectful to you. It's just a dialogue process that should evolve around respect. And when the officer asks for the documentation related to who owns the vehicle and to your driver's license, I would gladly cooperate. At the same time, if you're trying to get out of a ticket, you have to ask him, officer, I'm trying to get out of this ticket. I deeply apologize for the infraction I committed. Are you feeling in a good mood today to give me a break? Yeah. The reality, if he's on a motorcycle, it's probably not going to happen because his intent is to enforce traffic.
Right.
If it's someone in a black and white whose primary focus isn't necessarily traffic, you may have a shot. If you can get into their heart about, hey, I'm just going to a wedding, or I have a family member, I'm going to the hospital, hey, my brother-in-law's an officer, give it a shot. If you have some humor, that would be great. You just don't want to be intimidating or put the officer in a defensive position regarding safety, because it's a very dangerous incident. That's one of probably the most dangerous things a police officer can do, is to pull someone over on the side of the road. And hope for the best. My wife and kids get tickets, it's just a fact of life. And the best way to deal with an officer is not get pulled over.
Right.
And the officer is recording everything. Everything is recorded today. And so many of our complaints are being disproven now, because before the cameras were on the officer's chest, it was their word against the officer's. Now the camera is speaking volumes. There's cameras inside the black and whites. There's cameras on the officer's chest. Everything's being recorded, and most often the officer's actually right.
Mm-hmm. I think surveillance or filming everything and honesty. I mean, I there's nothing I don't film.
Correct.
And there are a lot of people in my life who are like, oh, don't post that. Don't film this. I don't want people to see that. Just yesterday, he asked me not to post something. I don't give a fuck what you post, okay? Because if you're living a life without secrets and lies, which is the way everybody should be living, then what's the problem? Yeah. And I think surveillance in general, it might sound like, Big Brother or national, like there's a lot of people that don't want that. But I believe it'll only be good.
Well, I love your videos, Pat. I love when you're in a store and you're filming and the guy's like, hey, you got to go outside and do that. And I love you because you go right after the guy. Hey, this is a public store.
But people also come after me. You're being mean to the guy. And I'm like, well, this was an interaction that happened. And I don't know.
Yeah, I love the transparency. I'll say that.
I just think that surveillance brings out the best or the worst in people. Because if I start filming someone, they're either going to become like, oh, they have love, and they're not like afraid. It's almost like as soon as you do that, the person and what they're like, they like secretive and fear based that will show up, or are they like inspired and love based? And if you see it, like it's almost like it brings out the angel or the demon within a person.
Yeah, no, I get
So
that.
crazy.
How about people say, you know what? You just didn't get the best of me today, or or they made a mistake, and then you've captured that mistake, and now the mistake is tagged and posted online. When 99% of the time, they're actually good people who fundamentally are flawed in that moment, and there's no forgiveness opportunity because you've posted the ugliness of them, and the grace and beauty of them will never be displayed because you're not there to capture that. And I can see kind of they're like, man, this is you just didn't catch me in a good moment, and
for sure.
I see that. I see.
Well, that's where they have the opportunity to post whatever they want or just not. And that's the other thing is I think people, like, nobody knows who that person is.
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
It's just a person.
It's
And everybody is so attached to this idea that they are the most important person in the world. The truth is that, like, nobody cares. You're not that important. I'm not even that important. I'm just like realizing the truth in that. Like, fuck it. Like, who cares? Like, let's just be a part of this social experiment of honesty, transparency, and like, you're not that important, dude.
So true. My daughter has a saying called NBC, nobody cares. And when she wants to emphasize it, she'll say, hey, ANBC, ain't nobody care.
Yeah.
And it's so true. It's like everything is so quick and so fast today that 30 seconds from now, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
I mean, I let it go, but even what you were just saying, he and I talk about, even because they're always filming all the time. And then usually when I pop into the whatever storyline's going on, it's usually has to do with like, it's the most interesting when I've like fucked up or like was super drunk somewhere or something. Like that seems to be like the more entertaining thing. I'm like, doesn't give the whole pie, but
I mean, that's the other thing that sucks is that like people, like the drama just gets more views.
Well, it's like the news. Hey, no one wants to start the news with a love story. They want to start with heartbreak and emotion. You know what they say? If it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
And so that's what sells commercials, and that's what draws people in are those situations. So that's what brings news,
But I mean, it's definitely not true. If you're in my life, I've posted. I mean, the percentage is probably there's way more dope shit of you than there is bad stuff.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So, but in
I'm
your
also
mind,
not really fighting it most of the time.
In your mind, you're thinking, you just literally said most of the time it's me doing some dirt, but it's actually not. But that's the problem. We are always like, one negative comment, 10 good ones. We're thinking about the one negative one. Sure. And that's another like.
Well, isn't how life goes. Everyone has 50 great things going on every day in their life, and they're going to focus on the one thing that's not going on. I get the focus to try and improve that, to turn it into a positive. But if you spent time working on and finding the praise and valuation in the 99 things going on for you that day, or the 50 things, or the 5 things, or the 3 things that are going so well for you today, and you focus on that, you will naturally handle the one issue that's problematic for you. It goes back to your early conversation. You get so tunnel vision on the thing that's not going well that you create a negative momentum and that cynicism that creates another thing not going well. Then you focus on that. Then there's 5 things, and there's 10 things. When you started off having a beautiful day because you had 4 great things, and that's why we have gratitude journals. That's why when you get up, you try to find out what's so beautiful about today, the 3 or 4 things that are worth me having a great day today. And to get out of that rut or that cynical mode, and quite frankly, the device in front of us is so full of cynicism and wants to sometimes drive you into that negative element that you have to fight it every day. So, for me, I try to have a list of the great things going on, and when something is not going right, I try to correct my mindset and say, hey, tell yourself right now, Cory, 5 things going well today.
Do you actually write stuff down?
All the time, and my iPhone's on my notes.
Right.
Thousands and thousands of notes about the goodness in my life, about the goals in my life, about the things I need to do. I'm a checklist guy. If I have 10 things to do today and I do 7, I'll give myself a good grade, like, hey, I did some good quality things today. But most of that is just trying to help others and help my kids, help my wife, help my neighbors to be a good person. And a lot of ways to do that is by helping myself and having a good self-management skill set so I can push further down the road to be of service to others. And I think if we all had that mentality and we all were servants to others, like at Graceland Ranch, what you guys doing here is so beautiful. If more people adopted that model and could sustain a model that you're trying to develop, I think we'd have a better world. But yeah, I'm a big believer in gratitude. I'm a big believer in the momentum of optimism. to dilute the cynicism that we face. And in this society today in Los Angeles, there's a lot of cynicism out there, guys.
Yeah. It always does. Whenever you are of service to somebody or you do something, you're helping somebody out, you end up happier. It always seems to work out.
To
that
give
way.
the
It's hard
gift-
to remember, but
To give the gift to others, a physical gift or the gift of love, is the most rewarding thing. I mean, let me tell you, as a 57-year-old guy, married 24 years, to do something honorable to your spouse or to your children, to see them grow, or to your neighbor, or to even though I was employed by the city for 35 years, to go to work to help to make mankind better, to serve is just the most gratifying thing you could ask for.
So I just want to say one thing in the spirit of that, and then we're gonna stop because we have dinner in 20 minutes. I've been in the music thing, and we did the production thing, big things like music video. I mean, we've done some really cool stuff, right? And at Hypercrush, we were doing, performing and signing autographs, and kind of like, a lot of people dream to get a record deal and be able to do. What happened last night in this house was more rewarding, and I get a feeling of fulfillment. Wickham, you should probably not have stopped filming. This was about to be something really cool. I'm basically comparing all the glitz and the glam to something specific that happened in this house last night. I got a call. There were some residents noticing one of the other residents' behavior, and they said she seems like she's high, and she's on some medication that you can get high off if you take more than what you're prescribed. So I came here at 11:30. Me and Veronica had just sat down to watch The Sopranos. Like, literally, I'm sitting down. I haven't been able to do this with her and I get this call, and I'm like, at first I was like, oh, we'll deal with it tomorrow. Get some more ammunition. See if she can get honest about it. But then Jason was like, no, we got to go there right now. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. So I came here, and I just told her, like, you have an opportunity to get honest. I finessed her a little bit. I said, we're here for you. Like, let it go, like, get honest about it. And she started crying, and she got honest about it, and the other people in the house were inspired with her ability to get honest about something that she's been lying about her whole fucking life. And it was just magical. It was like, this is the first she's actually going to be addressing this monkey on her back.
Like a breakthrough.
Yeah, it was a breakthrough.
Wow, that's
And it was just like, that's what I am hungry for right now. I also am really hungry to be creative and do a lot of other stuff as it relates to this house and Ridge Production. But like that right there, like, I don't know. It's like, it gets me high.
What was she doing?
She was taking her medication in her hand and walking upstairs with it and saving it.
Wow.
So that the next day when she got it, she could take twice the amount.
Wow.
So, and she just got honest about it. She changed her sobriety date, and now, we're going to be watching her and everyone else way more closely. But I think it was I'm glad it happened, because it got everyone in the house to see that you can get honest about something. And we're like one of the people in the house, like, told us, like, they told on her, like, in jail and on the streets, you never tell on anyone. But in here, you might save someone's life.
Sure.
So it was cool. Like, it's working.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, Pat. There's an Italian term called nunc cepi, N-U-N-C, and then C-E-P-I. It means now I begin again. Now I begin anew.
Born again.
And, yes. Yeah. And if you live your life with the mindset that everything you do, you begin anew with humility, with character, with a value set and beliefs, you're always restarting your framework of your mindset. And I try to subscribe to that. Like, now I begin again. It's a new handshake. I walked in here again today, but it's a new beginning in a new relationship again. Yeah. And it keeps you back, and it keeps you whole, and I think it keeps you healthy moving forward. So for her, it's now she begins again. Yeah. And to have that breakthrough and have you guys reach out and develop an opportunity for her to get better is incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I don't even want to really take credit for it. It's like, just God's working
it's God's
in
will.
all of our lives. And I'm really grateful to my parents. I mean, they really are the ones that are, could you imagine, like, Martha trusting me I mean, back when I was filming her wedding with dreadlocks, high on Xanax. I mean, that's who I was, and now I'm like, we're in this house, and it's cool. Miracles really can happen. Thanks for coming out.
You're an incredible story, Pat. Yeah, you know how I feel about both of you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to say hello, and hey, my respect and love for you guys is till the end, man. I just love what you're doing, and for me at my age to sit around and see the success, the prosperity, and the steps you guys are making. Progress. You're just changing lives, and you're game changers. And I've always been thrilled. And too often in my house, I hear the rich voice coming through my wife's iPhone. I'm probably one of those Americans. My wife and I follow Pat, and in many rooms in our house, I hear Pat Rich walking into that iPhone about something going on. And there's always humor, some emotion, but I know in the end there's just a lot of love. And so, peace out to you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, man.